My name is Caitlin Hickney, and I'm with the Clinic on Writing for the Public Good. And today we are here with Timothy Vollmer, who is a public policy manager with Creative Commons. Creative Commons is an organization that provides free, easy-to-use copyright licenses to give public permission to share and use creative work legally. Mr. Vollmer is here today to talk with us about open access policy, his personal experience as a writer working for the public good, and Creative Commons as an organization also working for the public good. Mr. Vollmer, whenever you're ready.
Great, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to talk with all of you and answer any questions you have also. Just to give a little bit of a background, or maybe just a little bit of what we maybe can talk about today a bit. I can give a little bit of an overview of Creative Commons, how it sort of works and the work that we're working on, and then we can dive a little bit into I've sort of developed a little bit of a case study. I know you guys are interested in different types of writing for the public good, and I have some experience there working both for Creative Commons and also a sister organization that we work quite closely with, Communia, based in Europe. And I thought it was an interesting sort of case study as I looked at both of the organizations, because the approach to our policy writing is a little bit different, even if we have the sort of same overall goals. So I did a little bit of a compare and contrast between the writing that Creative Commons does and the writing that Communia is working on. And I'm involved with both organizations. And then we can talk a little bit about developing an open access policy, some of the experiences we have working with governments and also philanthropy. So a little bit of an overview of what Creative Commons is. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been around since 2001, and we provide free copyright licenses and other tools that allow people to share more openly on the web, to share under some rights reserved instead of the default all rights reserved. And to take us a kind of step back about why Creative Commons is important, we kind of have to look at a little bit of the economics of sharing and copying today, and how it's different from sharing and copying in the past. And this chart is kind of an interesting example that my colleague usually shares in terms of how much does it cost, 500 years ago, for like a scribe to like copy a book by hand. It costs like thousands of dollars or whatever the equivalent monetary value is. But then when we start seeing new technologies like the printing press, obviously the cost goes down because you can have mechanical things reprinting things like books. So it kind of goes down to like maybe $1 per copy. Then of course, when you have the internet, which is like a giant copying machine, it's essentially free to share text, to share bits online. So we see sort of a massive decrease in the cost of what we talk about in terms of copying. And then of course, distributing is the same thing. You can think of like how much it costs to like carry a book from city to city and deliver it to someone else. And then of course, when you have the printing press and you have sort of modern transportation technologies, cost goes even lower. And then of course, when you have like the web or the internet, it's essentially free to share and distribute things online. So we see these kind of massive changes in how copying and distributing works with the internet and with digital technologies. But I think the problem that we've seen, at least from a Creative Commons perspective, is the legal aspects are sort of the same. Things haven't caught up. So, we had this idea with digital information, copying is free, and with the web, sharing is free. But of course, we have these laws that are sort of static, and they sort of get in the way of what we want to do with these sort of things. So, if you took a look at copyright law today, it's supposed to encourage creativity. It's supposed to encourage knowledge production. But I think we may question, like, is it actually doing that? What are the barriers that are being put up in the way? Copyright law today is automatic. You don't have to like apply for it. You don't have to like ask for it. You just get it automatically. The moment you take a photo in your iPhone, you have copyright in that photo, automatically. The copyright terms are really long. It lasts for the life of the author plus at least 50 years. And in the US, it's 70 years. So, it lasts a really long time, even if you want it or not. Infringing copyright can be really expensive, up to $150,000 per infringement. And of course, we have these other things that are useful and beneficial for the public good around copyright. We have safety valves, so making fair uses of works without having to ask permission, or we have this idea of the public domain. So once things expire from copyright, they go back into the public domain, which is an area in which anyone can use it for whatever purpose they want. And where Creative Commons comes in is we've offered this sort of solution for like a some rights reserved approach, because some people just want to share stuff. You know, they don't want maximum protection. They're not like the Disneys and the Warner Brothers of the world trying to protect everything. They want their stuff to be used and shared and enjoyed. So that's where sort of CC kind of comes in. We have this some rights reserved approach. And what the licenses do is allow people, creators, to communicate how they want their work shared and used around the world. And it grants some of these permissions in advance, but it also requires a few things as well. So we like to talk about Creative Commons as breaking down some of these artificial legal barriers, since we now have basically free copying and also free sharing. So how does it work? We have these various things. I mentioned the copyright licenses. We also have public domain tools and an online sort of interface to make these things sort of pull together. You might have seen some of these licenses online today. These logos are pretty recognizable. The big websites like Wikipedia use Creative Commons licenses. So these are our 6 licenses on the right here. And here's an order of it in terms of the most permissions granted down to the least permissions granted. The CC licenses operate in what we call a 3-layer approach. So the first layer is really like the lawyer readable language. You know, these are like the long contracts that you see and you kind of click through online. It's like, okay, this is what makes it legally enforceable in court. And we have this thing called a deed, which is sort of like a human readable language. It's like a summary of it, you know, for us humans, so we can like understand what the licenses means. And then we have this machine readable code that's embedded in all the licenses that allows Creative Commons licensed works to be searched for and indexed by search engines like Google. So CC is pretty pervasive. There's over 1.2 billion licensed works online. I think it's actually maybe 1.5 now. This is probably an older slide. And of course, it's used across a variety of different platforms and projects, from photography and iconography to video and also audio production. Let's see what this is for, like writing and also journalism. It's used on sites like Boing Boing, ProPublica, Global Voices. It's used obviously within the educational sphere. So I already mentioned big projects like Wikipedia, the MIT Open Courseware use it. Other sorts of open digital textbook providers are using Creative Commons licenses to share their works. It's being used within governments, so like NASA, and also intergovernmental organizations like the World Bank and WIPO, places like that. And then also in the philanthropic sector. So these are big charities like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that, you know, spend quite a big amount of dollars per year. And what they're doing is requiring that any research that's produced using their grant dollars is released under a Creative Commons license so everyone can access and reuse it. Then also in scientific publishing, big publishers like Biomed Central, Public Library of Science are sharing scientific research under Creative Commons licenses. So that's a little bit of an overview of Creative Commons.